Welcome to Beyond the Coverage. I'm Chris Horner. Today on Beyond the Coverage, I want to discuss the Belgians again. Because when I woke up this morning, hop on the couch, having my breakfast, flip open the computer and start reading some cycling material, I see it's Jasper Stuyven, one of the Belgian riders from the World Championship team that got fourth at the finish of that race, and he's complaining about Remco Evenepoel again. Now, this is a great story to bring up. And I'm here to tell you, when it comes to Remco Evenepoel, he was absolutely brilliant at the World Championships in terms of how good his legs were. We all know the tactics were knucklehead. If you go back and watch the butterfly effect, I'll break down that whole race for you. I gave you 21 minutes of video time on the butterfly effect, discussing about how bad the tactics were from the Belgium teams all over. But I want to discuss Jasper Stuyven when he talks about Remco Evenepoel, and he talks about how selfish it was for Remco Evenepoel to do a television show appearance explaining about how he could have been world champion. Now, in my book, I don't have any problems with this. When you look at how the race went, it was a catastrophic nightmare tactically for the Belgians, but Remco Evenepoel coming on to the TV show explaining that, hey, I had good legs. He's a young kid. He did have good legs. He had spectacular legs for this year's World Championships ride. He was unbelievable. So I have no problem with him saying that. In my book, I'm okay with that. Then later, we see another article written on Cycling News with Wout van Aert complaining about that same conversation that Remco Evenepoel have, saying that he has no rights to say that, and that it's not cool to say those things on national TV. Wout van Aert, I'm sorry. Your guys' tactics throughout that whole race were a catastrophic nightmare. And Wout van Aert, you're the leader of that team. If the whole tactics fall apart like they did at that race, if you blame Remco Evenepoel, which the article said, Wout van Aert said that there was no reason for Remco Evenepoel to be in that move and driving it, and he wasn't supposed to be there. Okay, so now we got to back it up. And now we got to go all the way back to the riders' meeting. Happens weeks before when Remco Evenepoel was talking about Sven van Thornhout, the team director, the Belgium team director driving the car. He said that was their plan, was for him to cover moves. Okay, so he covered the moves. I'm sure it wasn't talked real clearly about when he should be covering the moves, and 178 kilometers before the finish of the race is not the time to start covering moves from one French rider going up the road. I mean, Benoit Cosnefroid is a quality French rider, but we're not talking about anybody of any kind of quality. The best rider in the world, and we know because Remco Evenepoel was in that break. No one can make it from 178 kilometers all the way to the finish. So it should have been discussed. Now, Sven, the DS, when you look at his resume, now he comes from cyclocross, amazing cyclocross history. He's been winning stuff left and right. Then he spent a couple years with Quick Step. He spent some time with Domo Farm Fritz. Last year, he was hired to run the Belgian national team. Now, I would assume he did the Olympics. They failed at the Olympics. I assume he was driving in the car for the European Championships. Remco Evenepoel fell dramatically there in the same aggressive attacking style that we saw from the Olympics, and then we saw it at the European Road Championships. So Sven, as the director, failed there to keep his riders under control, to either educate them and teach them the proper way to race, or to keep them under control. Now we get to the World Championships. For a week before the World Championships on Beyond the Coverage, I told you we might expect to see these kind of tactics, and then they materialized and we saw them. Now, it wasn't real crystal ball needed when you see the tactics played at the Olympics with Remco Evenepoel going too early, leaving Wout van Aert isolated, going all the way up the final climb and all the way to descent to the line where Richard Carapaz eventually snuck away and won a gold medal at the Olympics. Now, go to the European Road Championships. Like I said, the same aggressive tactics. They end up pulling Sonny Colbrelli all the way to the finish line, and Sonny Colbrelli smokes Remco Evenepoel to win the gold medal at the European Road Championships. Now, I sat here on the butterfly effect, and I blame Sven. Now, many times, you always blame the DS, or you can blame riders, and you could definitely blame them. Now I'm going to go back and blame the Belgium National Federation because they hired Sven. Okay, strike one, the Olympics. Strike two, European Championships. Now you're going to the World Championships. That's strike three. Now we finish with the World Road Championships. And Stuyven wants to have a meeting and get everyone back together on a Zoom call so that they can have everyone talking. But we see in the article written today on Cycling News, Jasper Stuyven says that Remco Evenepoel didn't show up for that. And now he's all upset at Remco Evenepoel for not showing up. Well, guys, we're talking about a 20-something-year kid, not a whole lot of experience, got blazing form, is a superstar in Belgium. Went on national TV, said, hey, I had the legs, I could have won, but they didn't allow me to. He's allowed to say that. That's no problem. Wout van Aert should have just come back and said, yeah, he did. He had fabulous legs, and he could have won. We didn't know my legs were going to go bad, but they did. So there's nothing wrong with that. Instead, remember, Stuyven, the director, instead of just calling up one-on-one and talking with Remco Evenepoel, no, you could always call me up and say, hey, Chris, I did call him, and then I'm wrong. But we don't know that. It's not written anywhere where I've seen where they've said that. And if they're going to put out this much bad blood from the time the World Championships finished all the way to now, there's been 3-4 different articles out there about how much arguing there's going on in the Belgian squad there about how the racing went. If there's going to be that much arguing, you might as well let out the whole story now. We should probably know every bit of the conversation. And we should get to tune in for that Zoom call. Hopefully somebody recorded it and they can release it to us. We know that won't happen, but we can hope. So, Stuyven, if you're hired to help the Belgians win Olympics, win European Road Championships, win the Road World Championships, and you can't win any of those three, and you can't get Remco Evenepoel to show up for a Zoom meeting so that everyone can discuss everything and just blend it and make it nice and smooth, then this is your fault. So you failed being able to get all the riders on the same page. Tactically, you failed, and 3 different times. Remember, we're talking the Olympics, we're talking European Road Championships, and the World Road Race Championships with the strongest, most star-studded Belgian squad in the history of cycling at this point in time. You got to go back to when Eddie Merckx was leading at the World Championships to see a squad like this to not be able to win with Wout van Aert. Now, I want to pick on Wout van Aert a little bit too, because Wout van Aert went hard on Remco Evenepoel. And I'm here to tell you, Wout, when you're at the World Road Championships, when you're the leader, and he is the leader, we all saw it. When you're the leader, when Remco Evenepoel went up early and you said that wasn't part of the plan. If that wasn't part of the plan, Wout and Stuyven, if that wasn't part of the plan, then when Tim de Klerk got up there with Remco Evenepoel only 15 kilometers later, do we see Tim de Klerk arguing with Remco Evenepoel to, hey, just pull the plug, abort, no problem. If Tim de Klerk gets up there and says, hey, pull the plug, we're done, and they stop, Remco Evenepoel's legs are fine, okay? He is fabulous. There's no problem. 15 kilometers, not the end of the world for a superstar rider like Remco Evenepoel to be doing something wrong. So, instead, does Tim de Klerk abort the mission? No way. Tim de Klerk gets on the front and starts pulling with Remco Evenepoel. So now you got not one, but 2 guys. And after the race, remember, Wout van Aert said it wasn't part of the plan. If that wasn't part of the plan, what was Tim de Klerk doing? When Tim de Klerk was pulling through like a monster doing massive pulls, why was he pulling through? Okay, so now we go back to the Belgian director. How is it that 2 riders on the Belgian squad have no idea what the plan is with 178 kilometers to go, and then 15 kilometers to go later, Tim de Klerk doesn't know what the plan is either. Now we get done with the racing, and we find out that Wout van Aert doesn't have any good legs. Now let's go back to Wout van Aert, because after that big, massive group, we're talking with Primoz Roglic from the Slovenian team was up there, Remco Evenepoel, like I said, was up there. After that group finally gets caught, it was Wout van Aert that put his whole Belgium team on the front and drove it like crazy. Then Remco Evenepoel follows the next move. When that move gets caught again, it's Wout van Aert that asks Remco Evenepoel to get on the front in a 17-man group and start pulling like crazy again until he blows up with 25 kilometers to go. Now I want to go back to today's story again with Jasper Stuyven, who said that any sub-topper could do what Remco Evenepoel did at the World Championships. So he didn't have a shot at beating Julian Alaphilippe anyways. Tactically, that is completely wrong, Jasper. You are so far off the mark that it's ridiculous. Had they held the energy of Remco Evenepoel from that early break of 178 kilometers to go, and then the multiple different attacks that he did, and then the full pulling that he did at the finish all the way to 25 kilometers to go. If he had not done any of those attacks, and Wout van Aert is in the final selection with him, Julian Alaphilippe attacks multiple times, the other subpar Belgium riders could take over, pulling back Julian Alaphilippe 1, 2, 3 times. And then when Julian Alaphilippe attacks, if Remco Evenepoel covers that move, for sure in my book, Remco Evenepoel could have just dropped Julian Alaphilippe somewhere and soloed in for the win. Instead, the tactics were a nightmare. Jasper Stuyven, you are completely wrong on your tactics about how strong Remco Evenepoel went, how strong his form was to win the World Championships. He clearly had a shot at winning the World Championships if the Belgian teams had just raced correctly. Instead, now we just see a cat fight going on after the World Championships with Remco Evenepoel, Wout van Aert, and all his cronies there jumping on trying to attack Remco Evenepoel. Guys, get over it. Work it out. You're both young kids. Wout van Aert's a fabulous rider. Remco Evenepoel is a great rider and going to be even better here in the future. So you guys better work it out. But I'm here to tell you there's absolutely nothing to gain from having a meeting with Fim 5 days later after the World Championships, unless he's calling up and you're all on Zoom and the first thing he says is, guys, I'm sorry, my tactics were completely wrong at the Olympics. They were completely wrong at the European Championships, and they were devastatingly wrong at the World Road Championships when we lost again for the third straight time in months of 2021. Big national team races. I apologize. I'm sorry. I will do better. I don't like to see this arguing from you guys. This was all my fault. I'll take the blame. Let's get the group all gelled back together and let's look after a fantastic 2022 season. If he didn't say those words in the Zoom meeting, guys, there's no reason even to tune in. For the rest of you guys who did, and Remco Evenepoel probably already saw that, so didn't bother hitting the attach button to join in on the meeting. Now, hope you guys liked today's Beyond the Coverage. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time real soon.